right, let's talk about this wonderful book, Raising Securely Attached Kids. The author is Eli Harwood. She's a mom of three and a trauma informed therapist. She has a background and strong interest in attachment, which is the psychological study of infants and their caregivers. But basically, that relationship, that attachment relationship, isn't just in infancy, obviously, right? It continues throughout our relationship with our kids as they grow into adulthood as well. And it changes. It's very dynamic. So, this book is about how we can do a better job to ensure that our children have a secure relationship with us. And we'll dive into what that means psychologically because it's very defined from psychological studies. If you are not yet on the list, you want to be, go to theparentdoctor.com/book club to get on the Empowered Parent Book Club list. Every month, I read a parenting book and I summarize it for you for free. And I give you an actionable PDF so that you can implement the key takeaways and have a better relationship with your children month over month, learning new skills. It is a great thing. It is free. Share it freely with your friends. It's theparentdoctor.com/book club to sign up. And I have a monthly podcast. It's called the Parent Doctor Podcast. You can find it on Apple and Spotify. Please go ahead and listen there. If you like an episode, I would appreciate it if you would rate it and share it with a friend and follow me. All right, so getting now into this book, Raising Securely Attached Kids. She reiterates something that we've heard in other books before, which is the importance of connection rather than control. When it comes to our role as parents in shaping our kids' behavior, helping them learn right from wrong, we need to know that they're always going to do things that catch us off guard, that are not what we would do, and that are surprising and maybe even a little scary. And what that means is that they are probably either being impulsive or they're emotionally dysregulated, and that's leading to behavior that's outside the norm. What we want to do first in those scenarios is connect with them emotionally. It can be our knee jerk reaction to just say, shouting, no, stop it, don't do that. That can be our temptation. And sometimes when there's a safety issue, that is the right thing to do. Obviously, if your kid's running into the street, you don't want to have a conversation about the feelings they're having. You need to get them to safety. So we have to triage these decisions and take charge when we have to. But if it's something more nuanced, like they're playing tug of war with a toy with their little sibling, or they're shouting, or they're throwing things, and it's not a life and death safety issue. In those scenarios, rather than correcting first, the best thing to do is connect with our child emotionally and seek to reflect and understand what it is that they're feeling. And when they are distressed and we kind of get them to name it or give a name to the feeling they're having and get them to agree that, yeah, that's part of what it is, then we want to co regulate with them. What does that mean? It means basically helping them feel. Doesn't mean that we have to physically touch them, but helping them feel through our presence that our nervous system is calm, even though their nervous system is not calm, and that we feel calm because we know that their dysregulation is not going to last. It's just a temporary blip. And we know that the real them is about to come back into the driver's seat of their brain and body very shortly. And so that helps them to calm down more quickly than it would if we came at them instead with an anger about their dysregulation or a punishment about their dysregulation, which is only going to make it harder for them to calm their body down and to calm their nervous system down. And what we're really seeking here is what's called attunement. And that's when we have this kind of just right responsiveness that helps our kids feel seen and felt and heard and calmed, because there's also an expectation that I know you're mad. I can see you're angry. You're yelling and raising your voice, making fists, shouting, throwing things, whatever. And I know that you will calm down, right? I know that we will do some deep breaths and your body will calm down shortly. So that's attunement. In the book, Eli does a great job of kind of outlining what kids need in order to form a secure attachment, and that is connection and co-regulation. What that looks like is when they're younger, a safe haven. We want our kids, especially when they're young, when they're toddlers, when they're infants, to run to us when they feel unsafe, scared, or uncertain. We are their safe haven. We physically are keeping them safe. As they get older, we will see that less and less, right? You don't want your independent 16-year-old to be running to you every time a kid on the playground looks at them in a dangerous or threatening way, right? We want them to be able to handle some things on their own. We want them to come and talk to us about it when they're feeling distressed. And that's the secure base part. So the secure base is more like touching base with you. They come back, they can trust you, they know that you're there, you're consistent for them. The safe haven is the shelter. And so as we age and become adults, we don't need that safe haven from our parents anymore, but we'll never outgrow the need for the safe base. And healthy development is this initial foundation that includes both, and then a confident enough stance as a parent to be able to let our kids go outside our realm, to boomerang away from us and come back, and to always be able to come back knowing that they will find a secure base in their connection with us. When it comes to attachment patterns, when this became studied starting in the 1950s, what we found is that 50% of infants have what we call a secure attachment pattern. You can actually look this up on YouTube. Essentially, there is an experiment where parents bring their kids into a room that has toys. It's a room the child's never been in before. They go in together, and then a stranger comes in the room, which is a little bit not threatening, but a little scary for the child because they don't know this person. Who's this person who just entered the room? So the observers see, what does the child do when the stranger enters the room. A securely attached child will run to the parent to seek safety. Once they see that the parent is at ease, they will gradually go away from the parent, start playing with toys again. Then the parent steps out and leaves them with the stranger. And then the stranger steps out and leaves them alone, and then the parent comes back. That's how this experiment works. Kids who are securely attached, when they reunite with the parent, run to the parent, are crying, they express their negative emotional state, they are soothed quickly by the parent, and usually within a few minutes can get back down and start exploring the room again, and all is well. That's about 50% of infants. The other common patterns are anxious avoidant, and anxious resistant patterns. In these cases, and again, it's not 100% of the time, but the parent and the child sometimes or often will have a situation where when the child comes to the parent is unable to tolerate what the child is expressing. So an avoidant pattern develops when the children learn to suppress their need. So they come to the parent seeking co-regulation. And if the parent can't give that to them because the child's expression of distress overwhelms the parent themselves, then the child will learn to self-soothe. They don't get that co-regulation from the parent, so they learn to suppress in some way that negative emotion themselves, distract themselves, and just get over it. So what you see in the kids with the avoidant pattern is they don't cry when the parent leaves the room, or they might cry a little bit and then stop. And when the parent comes back, they also don't cry. They suppress that distress because they don't trust that the parent will be able to handle it, and so they avoid it. What this looks like in adults is workaholics, substance abuse, alcoholism, narcissism, right? All of these things can lead, this type of attachment pattern between a child and a parent can lead an adult to exhibit those same problems because, again, if you don't know how to express or identify your negative emotional state internally such that you can bring it to other people to help you with it, then you will have to find other ways to make do to make it not overwhelm you. And that might be numbing it with drugs or alcohol, overwhelming yourself with work or other things that make you feel self-important, which kind of leads to narcissism too, because then you feel always self-righteous. The anxious resistant pattern, on the other hand, often will develop when a child and a caregiver have inconsistency. So sometimes the parent can be consoling and co-regulate the child when the child is distressed. And other times the parent is dismissive or unavailable or makes the child feel ashamed or ignores the child. What happens there is a lack of trust. The child doesn't know, am I going to get the good mommy or the tough mommy today? And so that child learns to be independent, to not go to mommy to seek soothing because she or he knows that maybe sometimes I'm not going to get it. And I'd rather just not be disappointed. So I'll handle it myself. So this can look in adulthood like overconfidence or toxic independence, people who don't want to play well with others because they just want to do it all themselves, which then leads to that kind of martyrdom mentality. It can come across as someone who's aloof, superior, or even antisocial sometimes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are antisocial, not sociopathic, but it just can mean depending on other people or even trusting other people with your vulnerable self is something that this person might feel a really hard time with. And that will affect you as a parent because if you can't be vulnerable, if you can't admit you're wrong, if you can't admit when you don't have the answers for your kid, it's going to disrupt your ability to have a secure connection with your kid because none of us can feel 100% confident in situations all the time. And none of us as parents can fix all of the hurt all of the time. We have to be able to just sit with it. Disorganized attachment is the rarest, and this is something that you see when a child has been actually harmed in some way, emotionally or physically, by their primary caregiver. And what you see is that they will be unable to regulate themselves, unable to be comforted. And it's very distressing to see this, but thankfully, it's also the most rare. But even if you yourself had a significant history of abuse in your childhood and you worry that this might be something that if you had been an infant in this experiment, you would have exhibited, there's still hope. You absolutely can regulate your nervous system as an adult. But I do suggest that if that's ringing a bell for you, if you're like, oh my goodness, that's me, then you probably should be working with a professional, working with a therapist so that you can kind of work through some of those things and understand yourself better. But the takeaway here is that no matter what you as a parent connect with and think is your style, you can still develop a relationship with your child that is a secure attachment pattern. So there is never an expiration date, like no child is too old, no parent is too old. We can always learn these things that will allow us to better connect and co-regulate with our children. All right, so now thinking about the developmental stages, attachment and what it looks like at different ages is very different. A securely attached infant, like we talked about in this stranger experiment, is one who will immediately run to mommy or daddy to seek comfort and soothing. A securely attached 16-year-old is not going to immediately run to mommy and daddy necessarily to seek comfort and soothing. Teenagers naturally are running to their peers first, not to you anymore. But what they need you to be is always available, to be that secure base, to be available at 11 p.m. when they want to chat, even though you want to be sleeping, to be available to talk with them even after they've sassed you all day long, and to be comforting and listening and loving them. That's what it looks like when they're older. Toddlerhood is when kids first learn to hear no. For the first 18 to 24 months of their lives, we really just not spoil our kids. We can love them as much as we want, reflect their experience as much as we can. You can't spoil them at this age. At this point, we have to start saying no for their safety because now they're mobile and they can get into things, right? But we also have to help them start navigating their big emotions because as we say no, they're going to be upset about it. So we have to start doing this co-regulation and expression of like, you didn't like that I took you off the bed. You wanted to jump on the bed, but I needed to help you move your body because it's not safe. So again, you can explain, but understanding that when they're really dysregulated, the explanations won't be hitting their brains. It won't be infiltrating at that point in time. School age and preschool, things again slowly shift. Preschool is when you start giving them the opportunity because they're not just reactive and calm back down. You give them the opportunity to try again because hopefully they can start to regulate themselves a little bit faster and within a few minutes, like go back to the friend that they said something mean to or hit on the head and try again. 6 to 12 is when kids are really more able to handle things more independently. So it's really the beginning of that shift from the safe haven to the secure base. And adolescence is really the full shift to the secure base. This is super important. This is probably the most important part of today's lesson. And that is that when it comes to being in sync with our kids, being attuned to our kids, attaching with our kids, the best we can hope for really is about 30% of the time. So it's a lot like professional baseball. If you're batting 300, you're a pro. You're doing awesome. What does that mean? It means that the majority of attachment doesn't happen from in the moment being in sync and getting it right. It comes from repairing the misattunement, the misalignment after the fact. So we all have to get really good at not sweeping a misunderstanding under the rug, at not ignoring a hurtful word that was said by us or by our child and coming back to it in a calm way and saying, hey, I feel like we didn't quite connect. We didn't communicate very well earlier when I said this or when you said that. This is what I meant. Can we try it again? Or I was hoping we could discuss that a little bit. The repair is where it's at. The repair is where you're going to determine the long-term secure attachment of your child or not. And I can tell you as a child psychiatrist, This is something that most of us don't understand and don't do well enough. The apology, the acknowledgement. When things don't go well with our kids, it hurts our pride, right? It's really hard to admit that we might have done something wrong, but we know that it didn't go well. They know that it didn't go well. It's just not being talked about unless we bring it to light. So I really strongly encourage you to create opportunities for you and your child to have moments where you're reflecting on what went well this week with us, what didn't go well this week with us, what could have gone better. Invite them to give you feedback, see if they can invite you to give them feedback, and then hopefully you're on a constant path of improvement. But it's really the repair that's going to be the bulk of the work of the secure attachment, not the getting it right in the moment. Even though it feels so good when we do get lucky and we're in that like 20 to 30% of the time that we're in sync and it's going well. But most of the time, and this is true in all of your relationships, whether it's with your spouse, with a friend, with a sibling, with a coworker, most of the time we are not in sync with each other. Human beings are really complex. Like I got a lot going on in my life, in my day, in my head that you don't even know about when I'm talking to you. Same for you. And that's true for our children as well. So understanding that and understanding that we don't have to judge the surface in real time, we can come back to things, and many times we can come back to things to try to understand. It doesn't have to be one time at repair, and if we don't repair it, it's over. We can come back to it over and over and over again too. So I think that is really the key to take away today. All right, in chapter 3, Eli talks about healing our own wounds and how it's so important that we recognize how the misattunement, misalignment makes us feel so that we can repair ourselves. Because if you yourself didn't have a secure attachment with your parent and you had an anxious avoidant or an anxious resistant or a disorganized attachment with your parent, then the echo of any kind of misalignment with your child is going to bring up in you all those places where your needs weren't met as a child. It may not be conscious, but you're going to experience it as distressing. And so it's very important to prioritize your well-being. Anything that you need to do, whether it is having a night out with your girlfriends or your boyfriends, exercising, taking a day off here and there, travel by yourself or with friends, going to the spa, if that's your thing, like whatever it is that you need to do to take care of you is definitely something that is not selfish. It is in the service of your ability to connect better and be the safe haven that your child or children need. So never feel guilty about that. Therapy would be along this line too. All right. In chapter 4, she talks about feelings. I love the movies Inside Out and Inside Out 2. And you'll see here that this is based on neuroscience. So the core feelings that we have in infancy and early life are joy, fear, sorrow, anger, and shame. Brene Brown has done all of her research on shame. And so we need to be able to help our kids understand these feelings. And as Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it. As Mr. Rogers says, if you make it mentionable, it becomes manageable. We really need to help our kids, as often as we can, with as many iterations as we can, understand what their emotional state is that's leading to distress. Put a label on it without judgment, just to help them understand, like, I'm guessing this is how you're feeling, by being curious. Not telling them, but saying, like, oh, that sounds hard. I wonder if you're feeling a mixture of anger and shame because of what happened with your friends today at the lunch table. And then what you're looking for is for your child to say, yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like when you get it, then that's it. You've got your moment of connection. And that's going to be a token in your jar of secure attachment with your child. Chapter 5 is about building authentic self-confidence. This really dovetails nicely with the book we read last month, which was The Parenting Map by Shefali Savari, which she really challenged us as parents to understand that our kids, they are each on their own individual path. And unwittingly, as parents, all of us have written this script of a movie and a fantasy that we have about what our children are going to be, the type of person they're going to be, the kinds of things they're going to be good at, the kinds of friends they're going to have, the kinds of achievements they're going to have. And when our kids don't go according to our script, it makes us upset and we feel betrayed. So here, Building an authentic self-confidence requires us to really be curious about who our child is and to help them identify it and label it and take daily delight in them, not in who you want them to be, but in who they are right now. Help them understand their feelings by naming it. Speak positively about them. I love this little trick. I call it something different. So I actually talk about this in my course, Unlocking Love. And that is basically like, let them overhear you. When your kids are listening to you talking on the phone with a friend, or they're looking at your text messages that you sent to your friend, or you know that they will, even if they're acting like they're not listening or watching, let them overhear you complimenting them about something, bragging about something, noticing something nice that they've done, something caring that they've done, some character trait that you admire in them. Not so much an outcome or an achievement, but the type of person that they are. That's really where the money is. That's really where like you're going to get a ton of positive affection because it feels so good to be seen in a positive light by someone that you really by someone whose opinion you really value, doesn't it? I mean, if you've been working hard in your company, your boss goes out of their way to tell you what a great job that you did, it feels great. Or if you worked really hard on throwing your spouse a surprise party and he or she comes to you and like expresses a heartfelt thank you, and that feels so good. The same is true for our kids. Like when they feel like you noticed the thing that they did, especially if it's a little thing, it goes so far. And then receive to give. This is basically when we show empathy, forgiveness, generosity to our children, we don't spoil them. We build their muscles to be empathic, forgiving, loving friends to the world and their friends. So we won't make them soft. We won't make them needy. We won't make them spoiled by doing all these things. It's actually the reverse. We'll make them more empathic, more sure of themselves, stronger by letting them be really truly seen by us. Okay, the last part of the book is all about structure, conflict, and protection through connection. And here, again, kind of, I don't want to say it's counterintuitive, but it does feel like, you want to love them, you want to see them, you want to give them all those things. That doesn't mean they're letting them do whatever they want. It's that, but it's also providing a firm structure for your kids that's going to lead to the best development. We want to have high expectations because we love them and because we know that they're capable of it. It should be appropriate for their age and their ability. And we want to have clear boundaries and be consistent in those boundaries. That's what kids need in order to feel safe and secure. If your boundaries are flexible, ever changing, that's not safe and secure. Imagine if you worked for an employer and like some weeks they demanded that you worked 60 hours a week and some days you could take off at 2 p.m. and no one's going to say anything. It would feel unfair. It would feel willy-nilly. It would feel just like you are angry at being at this person's mood, right? Like subject to their mood and whether it's okay today or not. That would lead to an anxious resistant pattern. Whereas if you're consistent, like this is the expectation, you need to be here when you show up and do a good job. I am proud of you. I'm happy for you. When you don't, I ask what's going on and I know you're capable of it. So why can't you do this? What do we need to do to problem solve? That leads to good self confidence, good identity, and better relationship. Secure conflict resolution comes back to the 70% of the time that we get it wrong. Even if we're doing a great job, that's where we need to repair. We need to be able to apologize, to co regulate, to connect, to stay calm enough that we can wait for our child to be calm before we correct or revisit the question or the problem. And then connection as protection. So, really, a deep, trusting relationship between you and your child is going to help them appropriately seek help, not just from you, but from other adults and other friends in their life. If a child has an anxious attachment, they're much more likely to hide things, both from themselves and from other people, because they don't have the skills and the trust that other people would be able to help them to sort things out. So this is the last slide. She talks about the Parenting Manifesto from Brene Brown, which is a wonderful document. I encourage you to read it. I'll give it to you all in PDF form as well. But basically, we want to prioritize connection over compliance. It's not about control. It's about having structure, connecting with our kids, and helping them understand why the structure's in place, and not shifting that structure or expectation if they don't like it, but just letting them know why it's there. It's about embracing repair over perfection, understanding that the goal is not to be perfect, to get it right 100% of the time. That if we're in sync and attuned 30% of the time and making a decent effort to repair the other 70% of the time, then we're going to be doing a great job and have a wonderful, secure relationship with our kids. It's about choosing growth over rigid control. So if we are, as our kids get older, noticing that we're butting heads more, our structure, our rules are not working anymore, then we have to be dynamic. We have to say, you know what? It really seems like this isn't working anymore. Let's put our heads together and see what new structure we can come up with that will work better for both of us. And again, trust your gut there. You don't need to bend over backwards, but you do want to grow with your child. And then trust the power of an authentic relationship. Believe that a genuine, emotionally responsive connection with your child, one that can be dynamic, that can pivot, that can change the structure, is going to give your child a very strong inner sense of self-worth and security in their relationship with you. All right, guys, without further ado, we will get now to the question and answer part. Thank you all for those of you who joined us today live with Eli. It was awesome. For those of you who weren't able to join us, I hope if we have another author who comes, you will be able to join us. It was a really great intimate call where people got to ask her all kinds of questions about their relationships with their kids. And I think there was a lot of love in the room. So it was a great experience. I hope to have other authors joining us in the future. And thank you all for being here. For those of you who are part of the Empowered Parent Book Club and have kids who are around the ages of like 10 to 14, I want you to know I am doing a new program called the Tween Scene. It's going to be starting next month, and it will be a monthly Zoom. And I will be talking on a different topic related to teenagerdom and parenthood. And then we will be going into a Q&A that pertains to that as well. So my vision for this is if parents could come and attend this for like 12 to 18 months, you're going to get guidance on all the difficult topics that we maybe you know, maybe you don't know, that we should be addressing with our kids when they're in this teenager stage, that will prepare them in this secure connection with us to know that we are a secure base, that they can come to us and talk about these things, that we're not going to be caught off guard or reactive or upset, that we laid the foundation when they were younger, when they weren't yet in the heat of the moment, like getting exposed to drugs or sex or whatever, pornography, but that we let them know we know about these things. We know that they exist. We know that they will get exposed to it at some point, and we're ready to talk to them about it whenever they're ready to talk about it. Here are the things we know. Here are the things we're concerned about. Here are the things that we hope they will do and won't do. And to be able to have those conversations in an attuned way that isn't overwhelming for our kids. It's not so much one big conversation. It's not like you're going to want to have the sex talk, right? It's more about little tiny conversations here and there scattered throughout their early adolescence, especially, that are going to give you such a solid foundation in your relationship with them when they do become older teenagers and they start actually facing these choices that they're going to have to make in their lives. So the tween scene is for any parent who isn't yet in full-blown adolescence. If you're, dealing with the drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, this isn't for you. This is for the parents who are before that and wanting to weather that storm that's coming as smoothly as possible with their kids, and giving you a solid foundation of how to have those tough conversations. What should you talk about? How should you talk about it? And to answer your questions live each month in facing like what challenges are you having and what suggestions do I have for you? So if you want to learn more about that, go to theparentdoctor.com/tween scene. See you all there. Bye.